Hey guys, hope you're having a great day. Your old buddy Tim back with another video, and in this video we are talking about the crackdown nationwide over Airbnbs and other short-term rental properties. Now, if you missed the big news, a lot of cities around the country are now cracking down on Airbnbs, especially those that are not in particular zones, if they are outside restricted areas. But it's also happening here in Huntsville. And that's what we're going to look at today on the video. So I want to bring up my screen because we're going to look at some maps. This was a recent article that came up, the 25 cities cracking down on Airbnbs. Now, there's a variety of reasons why these cities say they are doing this, from they are operating illegally outside of specified zones, or they are in neighborhoods where short-term rentals are not allowed. Again, a variety of reasons. And honestly, I think one of the reasons why this has come up is the Airbnbs themselves sometimes have tenants who get out of line and they are unruly. They have big parties. They call attention to the Airbnb, and neighbors will file a report and it funnels up through the city. And then you'll have something like this where cities are just coming out across the board saying no more of these short-term rentals. I believe that's what's happening here in Huntsville, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But first, let's look at the list. These are the 25 cities cracking down on Airbnbs. You can see Colorado, Atlanta, Georgia is near here, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Dallas, Dauphin Island, Alabama, that's down around the Gulf, Colorado, a lot of Colorados. Kentucky, Florida, Montreal, New York City is cracking down, Oahu and Hawaii, again, more towns in California, Michigan, Maine, etc., etc., and now right here in Huntsville, Alabama. This was an article that came out a few weeks ago. Huntsville going after Airbnbs and other short-term rentals operating illegally within city limits. Now, I am very familiar with what's going on here because I have really good clients who own homes that are Airbnbs, and they are having to shut them down or at least take them off the short-term rental market. This news story basically outlines the fact that the city is cracking down on Airbnbs outside of their particular zone, which I think is R2B, which is multifamily, hotel, lodging, that sort of thing. If you have a house outside of those zones, for example, in South Huntsville neighborhoods where a lot of the Airbnbs that we deal with are, if they are outside of that zone, well, the owners got a cease and desist letter. It basically said you are operating Airbnbs outside of a restricted area. You are to cease and desist. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of how everything worked out, but in one case I do know that there was a gentleman that had a number of these Airbnbs that were already booked out through the end of the year. And so I think there was an arrangement made there where he could bring them into line as the bookings ended, and then he had to move them off of Airbnb. No longer allowed to do short-term rental. Now, what is a short-term rental? Well, it depends on where you are and who you talk to. Basically, a short-term rental is anything less than 3 months or 6 months, again, depending. In the case of what I am hearing here locally, the city is saying you cannot have tenants in a property outside of the zone for less than 6 months at a time. So what does this mean to the owners of these Airbnbs here? Well, they've either got to fall in line and either convert them from short-term rentals to something longer-term, 6 months or more. They've got to do something else with them. Maybe they rent them out long-term. Maybe they sell them. Their options really are limited because they cannot use them anymore as short-term rentals. What it comes down to is the zone where they are. All right. So let's look at the city of Huntsville. What do they define as a short-term rental? This is the City of Huntsville website. Anyone wishing to rent a property on short-term rental websites such as Airbnb and HomeAway must receive a permit from the City of Huntsville prior to listing. The operation of such a business without appropriate licensing is against the law. And they are taking this law very seriously. You know, These Airbnbs operating outside of the zone is really not new here. It's been happening for years. The city just hasn't been enforcing. And I'm not sure, again, why they are enforcing now, but again, there's a variety of reasons. I'm thinking too many parties in the Airbnb. Anyway, if you do want to do a short-term rental in the city, you've got to contact the zoning department. You need to make sure that your property is within the correct zone. If it is not, if it's outside of an R2 zone, you're not going to be able to do anything with it as far as short-term rental. You then have to apply for a business license, pay for the license, and I believe that you have to pay a lodging tax, and there are some other hoops that you have to jump through. That is if you do it legally through the city of Huntsville. And again, they're enforcing this, guys. You don't want to try to skirt this. So let's now look at what are the various zones. So primarily the R2, A, B, and C zones are the ones that allow different kinds of residences, not just single family homes. Airbnbs primarily fall into the R2B. So if we look at RTB, uses permitted: hotels, motels, tourist homes, rooming houses, boarding houses, office buildings, kitchenettes in bona fide motels located on state or federal highways, not to exceed 20% of the total number of units, multifamily dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, two-family dwellings, et cetera, et cetera. So these are areas that are specifically for multifamily, duplex, apartment, hotels, motels. And you'll notice it says single-family attached dwellings. This means dwellings that are attached to single-family homes in these areas, okay? So let's now look at the particular zones, and I think you're going to realize what the problem is. All right, so here is the Huntsville, City of Huntsville zoning map, and the colors that we are concerned with are green. Green are the residential zones. So if I click on this, this shows me that this is zoned R2A. It's a residence category, but if we go back over here and see, okay, what is R2A? Again, two-family dwellings, multifamily, zero lot line, family with attached, et cetera, et cetera. So there you could have your temporary housing, your short term. There's also the R2B, and those are even smaller. So R2B specifically is hotels, motels. From what I understand, the city is really enforcing this, where if you're not in an R2B, you cannot do an Airbnb. Now again, you've got your R2As and your R2Bs and Cs, but primarily they are enforcing it here in these little bitty pockets. So you see the problem. There's not a lot of zoning for Airbnbs. Now, if you look at some of these larger areas, all right, here's R2B. So you could do Airbnbs down on this end of town. This is South Huntsville, Drake. A lot of this is already done with apartments and that sort of thing. So when you see a lot of green area here, that's mostly going to be apartments, hotels, that sort of thing. But here's the rub. This area down here where you see all of this blue and all of this blue, these are residential neighborhoods. There are a lot of Airbnb housing in these areas, and that is what is causing the problem here in the city of Huntsville. Is all of these Airbnbs that are outside of these little green zones are now being shut down. They are, the owners are receiving legal notices, cease and desist. You can no longer operate Airbnbs in these areas. You are going to have to do something different. And if you look at a map of the city of Huntsville, which if you watch this channel, we talk a lot about this. Here's the city center with you got 565 coming from Decatur through Huntsville. You've got 231, which is the Parkway north and south. 431, which is going to Owens Crossroads, 72 into Madison. There are a lot of Airbnbs in these areas here where they are not zoned for Airbnbs. It's pretty simple, guys. If you are Airbnb, Airbnb, if you have Airbnbs in any color except green on this map, you are in violation of the City of Huntsville zoning ordinance. Hang on a second. You are in violation of the City of Huntsville zoning ordinance governing short-term rentals and Airbnbs. So again, if you have been contacted by the city and you have gotten the cease and desist, well, you do have some options. You can convert it to a longer-term rental. You can put it on the market and sell it. That's when you call a guy like me. But you are not going to be able to do anything less than, I'm being told, 6 months here. So I'm not sure how this is going to play out. There's really not going to be any fighting it. I talked to a lot of Airbnb owners who think this is completely unfair and they are ready to go to war with this. And my advice to them, or my words to them, is good luck. It's really hard to fight City Hall, especially over zoning ordinance like this. So the question in my mind becomes, what happens with Airbnb if they can't or if they are restricted by these zones in these cities? I know Airbnb is fighting this. There are lawsuits that are either coming or already in motion. But again, it's just damn hard to fight City Hall when it comes to something like this. So as far as outlying areas like the City of Madison does not have an Airbnb policy. They do not issue business licenses for Airbnb. City of Decatur, I don't believe they do either, although I'm not up to speed entirely on the City of Decatur. I'll have to check on that and get back with you. But bottom line, if you are an Airbnb owner, even if you are just renting out a room in your house, it's not going to be allowed anymore. I'm not just talking about single family homes that are being let out as Airbnbs. Even if you've got a room in your house that you've been renting out, that's no longer going to be allowed. That's my understanding, that you can no longer, unless you are outside the zone, you can no longer rent a room or a portion of your single family home as an Airbnb. All right, hope that was helpful, guys. Again, do your own research on this because every area is different, but I just know what's going on here locally, and as always, I know just enough to be dangerous. So, all right, guys. Hey, don't forget, if I can do anything for you, we've got Leading Edge Real Estate here. We've got almost 300 agents right now ready to go to work for you, helping you sell or buy the perfect home. And if you are an investor, you don't have to be scared off by the Airbnb crackdown. There's a lot of investment opportunity here for long-term rentals, corporate rentals, flips, that sort of thing. So, all right, guys, that's it. If I can do anything for you when it comes to real estate, my information is below. I'll talk to you soon.